your data? What is that tool that you can use to clean up your data when it is not well structured? Mass is very quiet and I can't hear anybody, so I don't even know if anybody is able to hear me.
Okay, Noye,
I
I
don't
can hear
know.
you.
Is anybody
I
able to
guess
hear me?
that type.
Yes.
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
We have followed you. Go ahead, ma.
Sorry, what did you
Thank
say,
you.
Samson? Your line is breaking.
Oh, sorry. I said I can hear you. So there is a message on the chat for you.
So I can't see anything on the chat. So maybe it's my network. Maybe it's the network. I've switched networks. So let me just go into the introduction since I can't hear anybody. So today we are going to be talking about data modeling. Data modeling. We're going to talk about what data modeling is, and I'm sure you've all met Samson. He's your host, and he has been taking you through a lot of the training sessions. So this is me. My name is Chukwunaye Okafor. I'm a BI analyst and also a Microsoft certified trainer, and I work with the Brown Consulting. And the agenda for today is we're going to look at some questions from the previous sessions. We're going to talk about data modeling, and then we're now going to look at the guiding principles for data modeling. So I'm sure in the previous session, yes, so someone has typed in the chat Power Query, and it can be used to clean up your data. And we learned about the 7 golden rules. I'm sure in your Excel class and also in your Power BI class, you learned about the 7 golden rules. And Samson informed me that you were given an assignment to do. You were given an assignment to do. So if I may ask, were you able to do the assignment, or are there some challenges you had during the assignment? You can just unmute your mic. Let's just talk so that the class can be very interactive and interesting. So what challenge did you encounter?
Yes, I is that for Power Query, when we want to clean up our data, is it a must we transform our data?
Is it a must you transform
Hello?
your data?
Yes, because I think that is it a must we transform our data because most time our data can be horizontal. So I noticed that when I transform it,
Is it
it is going to
transpose?
be on a vertical row. So is it a must we
Okay.
transform it before we start?
So it is not a must. So what happens is that it depends on the data set you're trying to clean. So there are some data sets that when they come in, they are well structured and you don't have to transpose them. But if you look at that, your dirty data sample that you were working on, your it was breaking some of your rules in amongst the 7 golden rules. And one of them is that it had multiple rows of headings, which is not supposed to be there. And our 7 golden rule says that there should be 1 row of heading. So that is why you're transposing. Then the second thing says every unique data category should have its own column. So if you look at that, your dirty data, I think for dirty one, in the first column, you have your years. The second column, you now have the region, you have the state, let's put it as state, and then you have the values for the state. Now, if you want to do it in such a way that you have each of your unique data categories in one column, then your region should have its own column because it is just limited to the regions. Then your state should have its own column because you're trying to make sure you do not break that rule that states every unique data should have its own column. And then your transactions or your values, your revenues should have their own columns because let me see if I can open up that data set so we just quickly explain it. Then I close it up. Now look at this 31. If you look at it here, this column 2, like that I was talking about, you have your regions, you have your products. I was even calling it states. You have your products, and then you have your revenue, which is not meant to be. Because from our 7 golden rules of data management, the rules of data management, it states that all unique data categories or all unique data types should have its own column. Now, if you look at this here, if we are to go with the normal sense, or maybe when you're doing something, you can't have text and numbers in the same column if you're just to go with that. Then if you look at it by data categorization, once you see northeast, you see north central, you see northwest, what comes to your mind is that, or once you scroll to the end of the data set, is down to southwest. What comes to your mind is that these are the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria, the 6 zones in Nigeria. So are they supposed to be in the same column with your products? No, they are not supposed to be in the same um column with your products or your line of business. So according to the 7 golden rules, these things should have their own column. And if they're in their own column, what can you now do? You now give them a name called region. So that when you now want to plot, let's say you want to see your region by revenue, what do? You now pick that column and then you pick your revenue, the transactions that they made. And here you can see your transactions is also, or your revenue is still in the same column, and you don't want it to be in that format. So what you can do is you have to now separate it. And the only way to convert rows to columns is by transposing. That is the only way you can convert rows to columns. But the data set we are going to be looking at today for the data modeling step, it has already been arranged. It's well structured. If you look at it, you just notice that we don't really have much to do on that data set. So that is it. So it depends on the data set you're cleaning. Some data sets, when you get them, you don't have to transpose. You just only promote headers and just do some little changes. But for this data set, that is what is unique to it. Thank you. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to clean up 33. We're going to clean up 33 together as they're together. So now I'll be going to my Power BI. I'm going to Power BI. I'll be going to Power BI. So I want the class to be interactive. I know you've worked on it, but anytime you want to get your data sets, where do you go to? Anywhere time you want to bring in your data, where do you go to from your previous class? I'll just type your answer in the chat. Where do you go to bring in your data set or the data you have? Okay, I'm waiting for your answer. So I think the network is quite slow. So David and Rain, I've not heard anything from you. Thank you. So we just click on get data. So anytime you want to connect your data source, anywhere you've studied, you just click on get data. So you can get data from so many sources. You can get from the web, you can get from PDF, you can get from your social media, you can get from folder. But since what we are working on is an Excel file, we'll just click on Excel workbook. We'll click on Excel workbook because that is where we want to get our data from. So once I click on Excel workbook, I'll now click on connect. I'm sure you've done that in your previous session. I'll now click on connect, and then you click on the data sets you want to work on. You search it for it. So since mine is stored under my downloads, I'll just click on it there. So yours might be stored on your desktop, documents, or wherever, but mine is stored under downloads. So I'll just click on open to open up that data set. So now we have several things being displayed here. You have 31, 32, 33, which are the data sets you want to work on. Now, if you notice, the first thing we did was we got our data from the source. Now, the next thing we have is the navigator, which is showing us the different data sets we have and we want to work on it. Now, every time you take a step in cleaning your data, it is stored under what you called apply steps in your Power Query. I'm sure you've heard of it. So it's stored under apply steps. So now you just look at it. So for me, since it's only 33 I want to work on, I'll just tick here and then I'll click on my transform data, because remember, Power Query is an ETL tool, and E means extract, T transform, and L load. So anytime you get your data, the first thing you do is to extract, and extract means you're getting it from a source wherever it has been stored. T means to transform. Is my data complying with the rules of a well-structured data? If it's not complying, what do? I transform it. After transforming, that's when you now load and then you start creating visual. Now, looking at this data set, looking at our applied steps, remember we said the first thing we were to do was to get it from a source. The next thing is navigation. Now, we notice that Power Query is very smart and is assuming we need these two steps, but we don't need those two steps, which is promoted headers and change type, because the only steps we took when we're getting our data was source and navigation. Those were the only two steps we took when we're getting our data, and we don't need these other steps, so we just cancel it because we didn't ask it for it. It's an AI tool, so it assumes this is what these people want to do. Now, looking at this data, what do you think should be the first thing we do? I know you've worked on it, or what do you think? Let's make the class interactive. You can mute your mic. The class is too quiet. I don't know if that's how we do this session every time. Okay, go to transform and then you transpose. Okay, okay. Okay. Now, once you...
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Okay, thank you. So we've taken that step and you can see now it has been recorded under our applied steps, source, navigation, and transpose, to show you that we've transposed the table. Now, the next thing we want to do is looking at this data now. We have store here, and automatically we know store is like the column header here. It's telling us what is meant to be in this column. Line of business is telling us, okay, under this column, this is line of business. Model, these are models. So this is like the column header. Now we want this column header, which is in row 1, to come on top here. We want this column header, which is in row 1, to come on top here, first of all, before we even think of cleaning the other data sets. Now, how do we do that? We want to make sure this row 1, thank you, we use our first row as header. So now, if you go to your transform tab, because back where you have different tabs, here you can see use first row as headers. Use first row as headers. But there are several ways to do things. So you know there are like shortcuts in life. So if you don't want to go through under your home tab, you don't want to go to that transform tab to use that use first row as headers. Anytime you have a table and you want to work on the table, please look at my screen. So before your column one, you see this small thing that looks like a table here. It has a drop down. See this small icon that looks like a table here. If I click on that icon here, if I click on the icon, you can see here use first row as headers. Use first row as headers. So I'll just click on that icon and I'll use first row as headers. Okay, now we're done with that one. Now we have some empty cells. If we are to do it in Excel, we call them empty cells here. And here you have some empty cells here. And we want to make sure all these things that are written here should come underneath here. Why? Because we know that for each store, you have these products you're selling: copier sales, parts, printer sales, and plant. So each store will sell that thing because it's one business that is that has different branches or different stores around the country, but you must always sell the same products, just like having a franchise. So now, how do we make sure we fill these things with this thing in column 1? How do we make sure we fill everything here? We don't, thank you, you fill down. You fill down. So in order to do that, we want to fill down both column 1 and column 2 together. So we don't do it one by one. So just try to make sure you learn how to do all these things together. So for me, how I select my second column is, the first thing you need to know is your first column needs to be highlighted. And for your column to be highlighted, you will see this amber color. This amber color, this color that looks like yellow. And that shows that your column 1 is highlighted. Now, the next thing is to select column 2 so that we can fill down together. So I press my control on my keyboard. If I don't mind, I press my control on my keyboard and then I click on column 2. Then I right click and I press on fill and click on fill down. So I've cleaned up the second one. I've cleaned up the two of them. So now if you look at this, our data set, we have column 1, column 2, and column 3 cleaned up. So we have column 1, column 2, and column 3 cleaned up. Now, remember one of our rules for our data to be well structured says that all our dates should be in one column. All our dates should be in one column. Okay, Ayola, your hand is up. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Question is that what if our columns now are many? I want to see. So we can't be selecting one after the other. How is it going to be?
So another way you can do it is you click on this one, then I think you use shift. Use shift and your right arrow key to select the second one. So you can click on the first one. Let's say this is the first one. Then use your shift and your right arrow key. Then to just select all of them for you. All the columns you want to select. That one is faster. Okay. So now, if you look at our data set, we are still breaking one rule, which is all your dates should be in one column. All your dates should be in one column. And here you can see our dates are like row headers. They're like column headers, sorry, and they're like in a row. But we want to make sure they're in a single column. They're in a single column. And in using our normal Excel knowledge, anytime you want to convert your rows to column, you do what? You do a transpose. You do a transpose. Now, one thing you should also notice when you look at this data set now, the way it is, if you've worked with pivot tables in Excel, this looks like a pivot table if you look at it, and it's like a pivot table in a tabular format. So you can convert it from tabular format to compact format. Now we want to make sure that this does not look like a pivot table. This does not look like a pivot table, and the command that will help you do that is called onPivot. OnPivot. Now, what OnPivot helps you do is that OnPivot helps you transpose a certain part of a table. Now, when you're doing transpose works on the entire table. It works on your entire table, but OnPivot works on columns. OnPivot works on columns. So now when you want to, like, let's say you want to transpose a certain part of your data set, that's some columns, you use the command called onPivot. Now, looking at it, you have column 1, column 2, column 3 well structured. It is from column 4 you want to now, like, you want to convert from rows to columns, because we said all our dates should be in a single column. So what we just do is we select column 1, column 2, and column 3, and then we right click, and then we unpivot other columns, because it is the other columns which are not well structured that we want to structure. Now, once we've done that, you can now see that all your dates are in one column and all your revenues or values are in one column. So after you've done this, what is the next step? You can just type in the chat. What is the next step after you've done this? Looking at this data set, what is the next step? What do you think should be the next thing you do? Yes, I did on pivot, and I said you should unpivot the other columns. So maybe it could be network. That is why you didn't hear. So the next thing you do is to change your data type. The next thing you do is to change your data type. The next thing you do is to change your data type. So anytime you want to change your data type, you come to this small ABC here. This small 1, 2, 3. You just click on it. You come to it and you click on it to check your data type. Now for this store, if you look at it, once you click on that ABC, you can see the different data types and their meanings. For store, the data type there is showing ABC, and ABC here means what? Text. So we'll just say, okay, that is correct. The model comprises of numbers and alphabets. So we'll just leave it as text. Now for our attributes, which is called which is meant to be our dates. What do you think should be the data type? What do you think should be the data type for this column that is called attributes? So I've not heard anything for rain from rain.
Should be date.
Thank you, dates. Then for our value, we just call it maybe fixed decimal. We can just call it fixed decimal. Then the last thing we now have to do is we now rename these columns. So yeah, this name here is store. The name there is for column 2 is line of business. The name is model. And then this column here, what do we name it? We can just call it dates because it talks about dates. So in order to name your column, just double click on that column header, double click on the column header, and you just call it dates. Then I can come here, I double click also, and I call it revenue. 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 And then that is all. And the last thing you just do is you just come to your home tab and you click on close and apply. You click on close and apply, and your data is now clean and is fit for reporting. Your data set is now clean and is fit for reporting. So let's see how it looks like as it's loading. Okay, so it's working. So now once you load your data, every time you load your data, you see that it will come under your fields pane. So you can see everything we worked on. The date, your line of business, your model, your revenue, and your store. Can we delete the change type that we have on Power Query? You can always delete your change type if you want to, but why do you want to delete your own? I didn't delete mine because, okay, I created my own change type by myself. I created my own change type by myself.
So you mean that if we create our own change type, there's no need for us to delete it.
Which one? The one we created now, which is we change the type to date, and then we change this one to value. There's no need for us to delete that one. Because if you don't change it to date, when you start reporting, it's going to take it as a number or a text, because you know previously it was a text, and then it's not going to give you accurate results. It's not going to give you accurate results when you're reporting. It's not going to give you accurate results when you're reporting. Now, is there any question before we go into what we have for today's session? Any question at all? Any question? Any question?
Go ahead, ma. We are following. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we want to talk about data modeling. What is data modeling and how do you create a data model? So now here it says a data model represents the framework of what relationships are within a database. Now I'm sure you've learned about database in your first session. Now, if you want to now understand how can I create relationship between different data sets? Okay, now let's assume you work in a company and in that company they have the HR department, they have the operations department, they have the sales department, and some other departments, let's say security departments. Now, every year they now send, okay, we notice the sales managers, they've not been able to bring enough profit into the organization. How can we now upskill them so that they can be able to make sales for the company? They now decide that, okay, we're going to send them for a training. Now, when they send them for that training, the organization that they send them to for the training will not bring back maybe an Excel sheet or a report that will tell them more about the training, how they performed in the training. Maybe they did some quizzes, they had some tests, and this is what was their score. Now, as the HR manager, you have your own table that contains each staff name, the staff ID, and contains maybe their salary and their due promotion date and some other things. Now, after the training, they go on carrying out their sales activities and then they now start making sales. And they are salespeople, they also document their sales. So in their table, they have is every staff name, they have the staff ID, and then they have the products you're selling and the sales you're making as a salesman or a salesperson. Now, after doing that, at the end of, let's say, the year, they now want to promote people in the office. They want to promote people in the office. Now, remember the salespeople have their own table, the HR people have their own table, and then the organization that they send them for training have their own table. Now, in each of these tables, they have their names, their email address, and their um let's say employee number, but they will not give the employee number to, let's say, the training firm. Now, if you want to connect all these tables together, you need to look for something that is similar amongst those tables. You need to look for something that is similar amongst those tables. And that thing that is similar amongst those tables is called the key, because that is what is going to create your connection between all these tables so that you can be able to get information about your staffs. So you now want to say, okay, the staffs that performed above, let's say they made sales above 100 million, let us promote them. The staffs that were not able to make sales, then can we now we're not going to promote them. Now, how will they get that information based on all the different tables I have mentioned? Anyone? So let me list out all the tables we've mentioned. How will they get that information? So we said HR table, we have a sales table, and then we have sorry, I didn't spell this one. We have the training table. Change this sales table, and then the training table. So just think of it. How do you think we can be able to get information on those that we will promote and those that we will not promote? How do you think we can create a connection between this sales table and this HR table? What do you think can be the thing that connects both of them that is similar and is unique to every staff that we can use to connect the sales table and the HR table? Anyone? Okay. So I said, now you've gone for trainings, you sent the staff for trainings, and they have their own training table. And then you have the sales table because they've not been able to make sales. So you have the sales people, they've not been able to make sales, and you send them for training. So they, after the training, they now go back to their normal activities and they start making sales. And you as the HR, you have your own table, and in your table you have the staff name, the staff ID, and everything that is about the staff. Now at the end of the year, we want to start promoting the staffs. Now we need to see. We now ask, let's say, the sales manager for their own table, which contains their name, their email address, the products they've sold, and then the revenue they've made. Now we want to connect the HR table. We want to connect the training table and the sales table together. What thing do you think is unique between all these tables that we can use to connect them together? What do you think is unique between all those tables that we can use to connect them together? Hmm? Sorry, what did you say? I can't hear you. Can you type it in the chat, please?
I hear you now.
Yes, I can hear you now.
I said I think it's
Shout table.
Yes, it's the HR table, but now in that HR table, let me expatiate it now. In that HR table, you have the staff name, you have the staff email address, let's say staff email, you have their promotion date, because remember I want to promote them. That's the promotion date, like the due date for all of them. And then you have the date of entry, the date they joined the company. Then in the sales table here, I'm not spelling my promotion well. Let's see. Promotion dates. And then in the sales table, you have the staff name, you have the staff email, then you have the products they've sold, and then you have their revenue for each of them. Then here from the training they went for, they have their staff name, they have the staff email, and then they have the training scores. The training scores. So what do you think we can use to connect all these tables together? What is that thing that is unique to all the staffs that we can use to connect them together? That is what I'm
Is the
asking.
staff is the staff name and the staff email.
So it's just one thing
Because
we're going to select. Which one should we select?
we should select the staff name. Because
No.
because hmm?
No, we can't select name. See, your name is Ayola Adetola David. You know, there's somebody that can still have the same name as you. It's a coincidence.
Yes.
But email addresses can never be the same.
Okay, you have our staff email.
Yes, we have our staff emails. So it must
But it's
be
unique.
something that is unique to them. So even though somebody comes into the office and has the same name as you, IT will never allow them to make sure that your email address is the same. They can now decide to put Ayola Adetola dot David 1. Maybe they will not put the other person as David 2. Because if they put the same name for the both of people, they create the same email address for the both of people. It's possible that emails that are supposed to be addressed to him will come to your email. Then emails that are supposed to be addressed to him will also go to address to you, will not go to his own email address. So you need to look for something that is unique between all of them to connect the tables. So that is what data modeling is all about, creating relationships between different tables to give you more insights about your data. So now from this HR table, the sales table, and okay, let me okay. Now from this HR table, the sales table, and the training table, they can now get more information that okay, we noticed about um 30 staffs were able to make revenue of like let's say above 100 million. What could be the reason why? And we noticed that just 5 could not meet that target. Then that's okay, let's go to our training table. They noticed in that training table, because they are connecting by the email address, they'll not check that okay, those 5 persons did not perform well in the training. The HR can now start asking questions. They'll call those 5 people. Why is it that you couldn't perform well during the training? Those people can now say, okay, during that training session, we had work activities to do. Or somebody can say, my child was sick, so I was not able to concentrate. I had to go to the hospital to take care of my child. That's why I couldn't perform. And I didn't gain much for the training. So that is why I can't perform back on the job because I didn't understand what they were doing in the training. So that is what data modeling can help you do, to start asking questions and making informed business decisions. You no longer have to sack somebody because they are not doing well. You cannot ask questions based on this training. This person did not perform well. So that means something happened. Is it that the manager did not allow the person to go for training? Is it that the person had one family issue to attend to? So that is what data modeling helps you to do. So here we said it helps you create a visual representation of your data system. Now we have 5 data modeling steps. We have 5 data modeling steps. And step 1 says list out all your reporting fields. So now before you can start creating your data model, before you can build a data model, the first thing you have to do is to list out all your reporting fields. I know you'll be asking now, what are my reporting fields? Now, if you go to this your table you want to use, let me just delete this now. Let me delete. Now, I want to ask, were you able to get the file? How many of us have this file that was shared? Please, you have it. Please just type in the chat. I'm sure it was shared with us before the training session. I want to be really sure. I want to be sure. Please just tell us if you have the file. The name of the file is annual sales.
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, thank you. So now the step 1 said list out all your reporting fields. Now, anytime you want to create reports, remember you pick based on some fields. For example, we have different stores here. So we'll just pick, let's say, store by revenue or store by units sold. So your reporting fields, just always take notes. Your reporting fields are your column headers. Please type, you can write that down. Your reporting fields are your column headers. So step 1 says list out all your reporting fields. Your reporting fields are your column headers. Your reporting fields are your column headers. So if you look at this, our data set here, you have different headers for your main data. You have store, you have trade dates, you have fiscal period, you have model, you have line of business, day category, revenue, and units sold. So you have all those things as your column headers or your reporting fields. So if you want to create reports, you can ask, I want to see my trade date by revenue, my work day by day category. So in order to do that, you can just look at my screen and later on you try it because I'm sure the recording is going to be shared with you. So you just list out all the steps. So step 1, so I've created like a table, and here I have my step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 5. So I've listed out all my steps here. So for my step 1, they said step 1 says identify all your report fields. Identify all your report fields. So I will just copy my report fields and I want to paste them here under my step 1 because I'm trying to identify all my report fields. I'm trying to identify all my report fields. All my report fields. So my report fields are store, trade date, fiscal period, model, line of business, day category, revenue, and units sold. Please, if you have any question, just let me know. Just let me know. Just let me know.
You create that step.
Hmm?
You create that step.
What did you say?
You create the step.
Yes, I was the one that created these things here. These steps here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I put it here, step 1, step 2, step 3. So you can just draw it on your book, maybe your paper and pen. You can just draw it there, and then you can just put step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Then we said identify all your reporting fields. I'm saying your reporting fields are your column headers, the column headers in that your table. So in this table, we have these column headers. We have store, trade date, fiscal period, and down to units sold. So that is what I put under here. All my report fields, I just put them under here, under my step one, because that is what our step one says on our slide. List out all your reporting fields. Now, the next one is step two. Step two says group the fields into categories and values. Categories and values. Now, if we look at this, our data set here, I want to explain what that means. Okay, let me give you 1 minute to write this down, to write step two down. Let me give you 1 minute to write step two down. Group the fields into categories and values. Okay, so step two says group the fields into categories and values. Group the fields into categories and values. Now look, after you've done that, your step one, if you look at our step one now, we have all our fields and we want to group them into categories and values. Now, if you look at this, our trade date, it looks like numbers. It's not like, no, it's not numbers, it's not numbers. It's never going to be a number. So let's say if you have your year, you have 2002, 2022, 2023, and so on. Those are categories. They are not values. Do you know why? Some things might appear to be like numbers, but they are not numbers. They are not values, sorry. So the only time something can be categorized as a value is when you sum them up, or maybe you try to draw an aggregation of it and it will make sense. For example, your account number and my own account number, they are numbers, but they're not values. Because if you want to use it for reporting, you can't sum up two account numbers together to make sense. Instead, those account numbers can be called categories. Why? Because from my account number, you can tell my name. It's like an attribute. It's giving you more information about the person. You can tell my name. You can tell my house address. So that's why when you go to the bank, sometimes they'll just tell you my account, your account number. Maybe if you're looking for, you want to get some information from them, maybe you forgot maybe sometimes they want to change your email address or something. They'll just ask you, what's your account number? You tell them. They will now ask you, please confirm your name. They already have your name, or they'll just say, is your name this? Because from your account number, they can trace your name. They trace your house address. If you give them the correct house address, they can trace your email address. Then also from your BVN, it looks like a number, but your BVN is not a value. It's a number, but it's not a value, because your BVN is like a category or an attribute that is giving them more information about you. That is why your BVN can be linked to so many bank accounts. It's just one number. It's like a key that gives information about a certain person. So that is why it is not a value. Now, if you are looking at this, our data sets here, which one can we call values? You can just type in the chat. What can we classify as values? Which things can we classify as values there? Or you can unmute your mic. What can you classify as values? If you look at the different columns you have, what can you classify as values and what can you classify as categories? So categories can be the attributes of that data set. What can you classify as values and what can you classify as attributes? Thank you. Revenue is value. And what else? And then
Sold.
units sold. So what you do in step two is that in front of the ones that are values, you put V. The ones that are values, you put V. You can just type it in your notebook. Then the ones that are categories, we just put C in front of them. We just put C in front of them. Because your day is a category. Your day category is a category or an attribute. your line of business is an attribute of your data set. Even your date is an attribute. It's because the date will tell you when you made that transaction or when someone came into that store. So just quickly do that. Just put this one up there. Then we go to the next step. The next step. So step 3 says identify the categories which form natural hierarchies and group them together. Identify the categories which form natural hierarchies and group them together. So I'll just give you time to write it down, then continue. I'll give you 1 minute to just write it down and then we continue. Okay, we said identify the categories which form natural hierarchies and group them together. Now let's look at our data set. So now we are talking about categories. We are not talking about values. We are looking at the categories that form natural hierarchies. Now when we are talking of hierarchies, we are talking about level, we're talking about order, or in like a database term, you're talking about parent-child relationship. You're trying to talk about relationship, the things that are related to each other. Now, let's go to this our data. Let's go to this our data. So it has already been cleaned up if you look at this our data. Oh, so now if you look at it now, this data set, this is how it was previously. Yeah, this is how it was previously. And they had to categorize them into this format. Now, let me show you the main data set before it was broken down into this format. Let me show you the main data before it was broken down into this format. So it's coming up. Okay, now this is it. No wonder it was looking so small in my eyes. This is it, and okay, so these two. Okay. And let me change it to black font. Okay, now it's better like this. So now they say categorize the data sets that are related to each other or form natural hierarchies. So we're trying to categorize those that form natural hierarchies. Now, if you look at this, our data set or that are related to each other, let's just call it parent-child relationship are related to each other. Now look at region, market, and store. Are they related? You can just type in the chat, yes or no. Yes or no. Look at it very well. Based on the data set I'm sharing, let me increase the size of what I'm sharing on my screen. No, you don't. No, I'm just sharing it to make you understand what we're trying to do. So your own data set has already been divided into little categories. We've already divided it into smaller categories for you. So if you look at it, They are
And if I may,
related to,
they are somehow related. Yeah.
yes, because if you look at it, they are talking about like location. So region, market, and store, they are talking about relocation, location. And we said we should group those that form natural hierarchies. So both of them, the three of them can be grouped together. Then if you look at our trade dates, our fiscal period, and then our day category, they can form a natural hierarchy. Why? Because they are talking about dates. Now, if you want to know now why the category is related to each other, when you talk about 25th of December, anytime someone says 25th of December, the first thing that comes to your mind is Christmas, right? Because that day everybody knows it generally as a public holiday. So now, obviously, you know it's not going to be a work day. Once somebody says 12th of June, so 12th of June, maybe even though it's 2015, you already know that, okay, maybe why we made so much sales is because that day was a public holiday. So your trade dates, your day category, they are all related to each other. They are related to each other by time. Then if you look at our model and our line of business, they are not related to each other. Why? Because if you look at, let's put a filter here. Let's put a filter. Let's say, no, I'll put it on line of business. Now, if I want to filter by copier sales, you can see once we filter by copier sales, everything here is showing 2005C. The model there is showing 2005C. Now let's filter by parts. Now, if you look at parts, you notice that parts has 3002C, has 3002P, have 4555T. Now, let's filter by printer sales. If you filter by printer sales, you have everything there is just 2005P. Now, let's filter by service plan. If you filter by service plan, you can see you have so many models that are intertwining. You have the 3002C, 3002P you had for parts. So that is what makes model and line of business not related to each other. But in some data sets, they can be related to each other. It's just like you're selling products in your store. Let's say you have what kind of, I would like give this example now. Let's say you're selling phones, you have techno products. Definitely, even though you're selling a techno earpiece, it can work on an iPhone, although both of them are earpiece. You're selling earpiece, you have iPhone earpiece, you have techno earpiece. They can work on an iPhone. So an iPhone earpiece cannot work on a techno phone, and then a techno phone earpiece cannot work on an iPhone's earpiece. So they are not related to each other. So if you look at it in that broad sense, it's telling you that the model and the line of business, they are not related to each other. So if they were unique to each other, then they will have been related to each other. But here they are not related. So since we are categorizing them, so for our revenue, market, and store, we say they are related because they are talking about things that are like let's say location. And if you look at it, let's go back to the data. Abaji, which is a store, or let's say Arochukwu. So I think here there's Arochukwu. Uh Yes, Arochukwu. So once you see Arochukwu, you already know that if somebody tells you I am from Arochukwu, you already know, I think the person is talking about them. Is it Imo State, and that's in Nigeria? Or let's say you travel back because Christmas is fast approaching. You travel back and someone just asks you, where are you staying? You just say, okay, I'm staying at Ikoyi. Once you say I'm staying at Ikoyi, because a lot of people have heard about Ikoyi for a very long time, the first thing that comes to their mind is, this person is staying in Lagos. That is the first thing. So that makes them related to each other. The store, the market, the unit sold, sorry, the store, the market, and the region, they are related to each other. So we can just call them location L, let's say L1, or we said let's group them into categories. Let's call them D1, D1, and then this is D1 also. Then the trade date, the fiscal period, since we said we all agreed that they are related to each other. So there can be D2. Let's just call them D2 since they are related by time. Since they are related by time. And then for the line of business and the model that are not related, we just call them D3 and D4. D3 and D4. So is there any question before we move on? There any question?
For D1,
You were saying something.
hello.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello, David. Your mic is muted.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
D1, for region to store, check each other.
Yes, they're related to each other because if you look at this, our data set here, look at it. So North Central, Federal Capital Territory, Abaji, they're all talking about certain location. So anywhere you see Abaji, you already know it's in Federal Capital Territory. And where is Federal Capital Territory? What region does it fall under? The North Central region. So do you understand? Or because your question is not clear. So you say what about what? You say what?
I'm trying to understand the D1 and the D2.
Okay, let me go over it again.
I'm trying to understand.
Now, I said if you look at our step 3, let's go to step 3. Step 3 said identify the categories which form natural hierarchy and group them together. Identify the categories which form natural hierarchy and group them together. Now, if you look at these our categories here, region, market, store, trade date, fiscal period, down to the category. They are all like attributes of this data set. And we're saying identify the ones that form natural hierarchy. And we say natural hierarchy, let's call it a parent-child relationship in sense of database. What are the things that are related to each other that we can group together? Now we look at it, region, market, and store. They are related to each other because as a regional manager in a, let's say, an organization, you will have different like let's say branches, you have different states. So for each region, you have a state that is under you. And in that state, you have different branches of your store. So those things are related to each other. You can be able to give information regarding them because they are all talking about geography or location. That is why they are related to each other. Then you look at your trade dates, your fiscal period, and your day category. They are all related to each other. Why? Because they are talking about time. From your trade dates, you can tell the day that transaction occurred, you can tell the month, and you can tell the year. And if you can tell the day and the month, you can know if that transaction occurred on a public holiday or a work day. So I was giving an example that if you have a transaction that falls on the 25th, 26th of December, you notice that you're going to make more sales on those days. Why? Because it's a public holiday and people are going to come into your store or outlet, or people are going to want to buy things during those days. Then on the 12th of June, you notice that you're going to make sales. Why? Schools are going to, maybe if you are a trader or something like that, let's say trader or a fast food outlet, schools are going to bring their children there. So you're going to make sales based on that day. And you can now tell, okay, during the public holidays, we make more sales. Why? Because people are not at work and they're able to take their family out, and thereby we now get more revenue. That is why we group them together. That is what we say, categorize those things that have or form natural hierarchy and group them together. So that's why we say store, region, and market. They form a natural hierarchy, and we'll call them what? Let's change the name from D1 so that we can really understand. Let's call them D location. D location, since all of them are talking about location. Oh, spelling D location. Okay, location. All of them are talking about the location. Then here, this one is talking about, let's say, the calendar, because it's talking about time. It has your dates. You can now break your dates into year. And here, I'll just call it the calendar. So since this one is not related to anything, we'll just call it the model. And here we'll call this one the line of business. Let's just give it a short name, DLOB. That's what we'll just call it, DLOB, because they are not related to each other. They are not related to each other. Then we go to step 4. Now, step 4 said, check the groups. Check the groups for the category with the lowest hierarchy and target. Sorry, what did you say? Your line is breaking.
Unit sold. How are we going to categorize that one?
So if you look at step 3, we said identify the categories. We didn't talk about values. We're not going to categorize values.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So step 4 says, check the categories, check the groups for the category with the lowest hierarchy and target. With the lowest hierarchy and target. Now, if you look at what we've categorized here, if you look at our location, our market, and our store, which one is the lowest in this hierarchy? Let's look at our data set. Which one is the lowest? Which one is the lowest in this hierarchy? Just look at it. Which one is the smallest? Okay, let's call it the child. So let's call it the child, that from that child you can get more information about the others. Which one is the smallest? No, for the categories, these things we've categorized now.
Okay.
Yeah, these ones. Which one is the smallest?
DLOB.
No, like the categorization now. Look at it from this sense. We want to categorize based on the location, the calendar, DLOB, the model. Now, let's just focus on only the location. Region, market, and small. Which one is the lowest there? Which one has the smallest hierarchy there?
It will be market.
Are you sure? Look at it very well. Let me give you an example. Let's say somebody says, I stay in Accra. Once they tell you they stay in Accra, what comes to your mind? Or let's say
Ghana.
Ghana, exactly. And what continent is Ghana in?
Africa.
Africa, thank you. Now look at it from that aspect. Region is very large. If somebody said we made
store.
A store, thank you. So from the store, you can now tell.
You know, the market, the way you put Federal Capital Territory, I was thinking like maybe Obalende market.
Okay.
You understand now?
Yes, I understand. So let me
because
feel
that
like
market now, if I see Federal Capital Territory subordinate, I will know that Federal Capital, we are going to see store in Federal Capital Territory. I understand.
okay.
And that Federal Capital should have been like maybe Capital City. I don't know as the heading.
Okay. Because it's not a Federal Capital Territory that is there under the market too. You know, there are a lot of data sets. You have Cross River, you have Ebonyi. So
I
it's just
understand
like your
what you are
state.
saying. Like the market, it gave me picture that I did not know that Federal Capital Territory City was there. You understand what I'm saying now?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yes. So now for the store, since it's the lowest, we'll just call it what can we call it? Let's call it our key. Our key, since it's the smallest, is the child. Or let's call it child. Since it's the smallest. We'll call it child since it's the smallest. Or no, I prefer key. Key tells you that it's the thing that gives you information about the other ones. So now let's look at our trade dates, our fiscal period, and our day category. Which one do you think is the smallest? Which one do you think is the smallest between trade date, fiscal period, and day category? If you look at it, all of them, they fall under calendar. Which one do you think is the smallest? Okay, let me just answer that because of time. So it is the
It will
trade
be
date.
trade date.
Thank you. Because from your trade date, you can tell the day that transaction occurred. You can tell the period it falls under. So that is why the trade date is the smallest. So let's just call it the next key. Then for our model and our line of business, they are on their own. It's just like being an only child in the family. Once you're an only child in the family, it's only you that people know. So that means you are your own key. You are the only, let's just say, you are the only hair in the family because there's nobody there that can drag property with you. So you're just alone. So that is what is there. That's just what is there. So they are on their own. So they'll just be reporting for their self since they are not related to anything. Then the last step says identify your fact file. Identify your fact file. Now, your fact file is made up of your key and your values. Your key and your values. So anywhere you have your fact file, you just put F in front of it. You put F, you put F. Anywhere you have your key, you put F and then you put F. But just type it down and then I'll explain what I mean. Just write it down. I'll explain what I mean.
Dábọ̀ ẹ gbàdúrà fún mi o. Ó pálẹ̀kùn dé, àwọn tó máa disturb mi.
Okay. So we said your fact file fields, your fact file is made up of your keys and your values. Your keys and your values, that is your fact file. Your keys, so these keys that we identified, and your values, if you recall, we've not touched the values since step 2. We've not touched values since step 2. We've only been working on categories. So your fact files are your keys and your values. Now, what are fact files if you want to understand? Your fact file contains those things that can grow every day or your daily transactions that can grow maybe every day, monthly, or yearly. Let's just put it like that. Monthly, yearly, or daily, or even weekly self. That is your fact file fields, or those are your fact file fields. Because if you look at it now, let's say trade dates. You had a training session last week Sunday, you had I think last week Saturday, and today we are meeting again. So another date of training has been recorded. So that is your fact file field. It's talking about those things that grow, even though it's not every day, it can grow monthly, it can grow yearly, it can grow weekly. Then for your store, let's say you're a business owner. You start your business with just selling let's say Visa phone. From selling Visa phone, or let's say no, Visa phone is even too far. You start by selling phone accessories because that is what is cheaper. From selling phone accessories, you decide, okay, I want to expand my business into selling phones. From buying phones, you start with Visa. From there, you can now enter maybe itel. You can now enter Techno. From Techno, Infinix, and then you can now enter Samsung and iPhone. Your business is increasing. Definitely your line of business is increasing and your model is increasing, and your store will not increase because maybe you started with like a kiosk. So you notice around in Lagos, you just see those people selling phone accessories. They start with wheelbarrows. From wheelbarrows, they get a kiosk. From kiosks, they now have a building. And from buildings, with time, if they are consistent and they are faithful in that business, they can now have different branches of that same store. Just this way you have slots all around them, Lagos and some other states in the country. So your store will always increase. Your line of business will increase, like we explained now, and your model will increase. And definitely for every day that you make transaction in that your business, your revenue is increasing and the number of units sold will increase. So your fact file contains those fields that grow daily, or let's say monthly or yearly. So do you have any question as regards these data modeling steps for this step 5? Do you have any question at all? Do you understand? Can just type yes.
Go ahead, ma'am. I'm getting you. Thank you.
Okay, so that is it. So I think we've exhausted our time. This is 5:28 and we're supposed to end at 5:30. So this is telling us about our different the 5 ways we can create a data model. So these are the steps: step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 5. And I'm sure in the next sessions which are coming, yes, our fact file contains values as well. Yes. This next session, we're going to now start, we'll just build out some things and then we'll continue in the session. So I think that's all from me. Thank you, everyone. I hope you've been able to understand data modeling and what it entails. So I'll hand over to Samson. I don't know if he's here. Hi, Samson.
Hello, Nonyi. Thank you for that wonderful session. Thank you. It has you try as much as you can to keep everything simple. That was really great. Thank you so much for the session. And yes, we'll continue tomorrow with the data modeling as well as data visualization and chart formatting. So I don't know if any of us have questions for Nonye before she log off the call. Hello, please, we can unmute our mic and just say one or two things. I don't know if any of us have question for Nonye. Yeah, this data modeling, like I earlier informed us, it's very critical to having an accurate report because most times you'll be faced with a large data set for which you would definitely make one or two mistakes, while creating your data modeling or while creating your data model, and that will really have a great negative impact to the report which you create. So it's a critical part of the data analysis and visualization part. So I don't know, before Nonye log off, if we have any question or have any comment for her, please, let's just unmute her mic. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay, I want to ask, like now, she said fact file are those things that go daily. Looking at market now, if a consumer or an individual wants to buy something and probably the market sells every day, there's a profit. Maybe it goes daily. Why don't you put it as F on market?
So we said it's your fees, so your keys. So categorize your keys. So if you recall, we said your keys and your values. Those are the things that grow daily. So if you look at your store, that's why store is smaller than market. So it's the store
Yeah.
that will increase. Yes.
Okay. So in a nutshell now, if only your keys and your values are your fat key.
Yes.
So is there another key we have apart from
No, for
fat
this
key?
data set, that is what we have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if there's any question. Thank you, Nonye, for that.
Thank
you,
you.
Nonye, for that. I don't know if there's any question before we call it a day. I don't know if there's any question.
Yeah, so is there a WhatsApp group for this program? Like where we can get to interact? Why we have any chat?
No, but you can chat me up on LinkedIn. You can chat me up on LinkedIn. There is no WhatsApp per se. There's no WhatsApp because we run this program almost every 2 months. So yeah, there's no WhatsApp. Just keep data private.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We'll connect you.
Oh, yeah. If you need question, you can also link up to Nonye and get clarification with regards to a number of it.
All
All right,
right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nonye, for that. Thank you so much. While in the session, I received a message that some persons won't be joining because they went for some program and like so. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll finalize the session tomorrow, and yeah, we'll finalize the session tomorrow. We'll be looking at data modeling using Power BI, and as well creating visuals, as well as writing some basic DAX, right? Please, let's just try as much as we can to join the call early enough tomorrow, so that we can cover a number of teams, so that we can as well close early enough, given that tomorrow would be the last session, right? So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nonye, once again for that great session. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. To have a lovely night's rest. Thank you.
And you too. Bye.
Bye.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Be logging off.